Good evening. I'd like to call to order this meeting, the Grandview Heights Board of Education on December 9th, 2020 at 7 p.m. We are holding this meeting using video conferencing technology. The Ohio General Assembly and Attorney General have approved the use of virtual meetings as a viable alternative to conducting public hearings during this time, and the district alternative complies with the new statutory directives. We will be broadcasting this meeting via our Grandview Heights YouTube channel. The link to the YouTube channel is currently available on the district's website. The live stream of this meeting is being recorded and will remain on the district's website for viewing at a later time. We still remotely, during all our regular scheduled board meetings, do allow public participation. Our process for the last 6 months, we've asked that by 5 o'clock on the day of the meeting, you work with the superintendent's office to get that set up. We do not have anybody signed up for public participation this evening. If people are looking to do that at a future meeting, just organizationally, we will tonight as a board set our organizational meeting date for January. And then at that January meeting, set the regular meetings for the rest of the year. And at the meeting in January or the rest of the regular meetings, public participation is certainly allowed and encouraged. Beth, can you please call the roll?
Mr. Bodie?
Here.
Mrs. Gebhardt?
Here.
Mr. Gutze?
Here.
Mr. Truitt?
Here.
And Ms. Wasmuth?
Here.
Under recognitions and presentation, we have 3 items. I already mentioned the first item. We do not have anybody signed up for public participation. So Mr. Culp, I'll turn it over to you for item B and C on the agenda.
Thank you, Board President Truitt. With that, I want to turn it over to Jay Tadina, our construction manager at risk with the CKE team. Jay? While he's getting set up, I will tell you I had an opportunity to do another tour last night, and I was joined by Greg Moody and Mike Curtin. And I know all of you on this call know those two, as they served as 2 of the 3 co-chairs or chairs of our levy campaign. And I hadn't seen them in a long time. And it was really nice to spend some quality time with them on the tour and just catch up. So I share that with you. That occurred last night. It was really great seeing them. I mean, really nice to catch up with them. So having said that, Jay, welcome. Nice to see your face. And why don't you go ahead and send us off on a construction update?
Yeah, for sure. We've had a few tours over the past couple of weeks with past, people involved with the levy or people involved with the community that have come out to see our progress. And if you've driven by Oakland or been fortunate enough to come out and join us for a tour, hopefully the progress that you're seeing, gets you as excited as it does our team. We've had some key accomplishments this month. Last month when I joined you, we talked about the winter months approaching and how we're going to prepare ourselves to be efficient and continue to be successful through the winter months. And that has to do with getting the roof on, getting the window enclosures in, getting the fluid applied air barrier installed. So if you've driven by and you see, a black tar-like product applied to the exterior walls of the new middle school, that's exactly what that is. It's our fluid applied air barrier that creates our envelope and protects the inside of the building from the exterior elements. And we got that knocked out as scheduled. Our roof is over halfway done, the flat roof. And this week we will start drying in the truss areas as well. What you haven't seen, but actually has started partly because of the cold weather, is on the north elevation of the gym, we have started exterior brick. And it is about to go like crazy. You'll see some tents. You'll see that the scaffolding is tented, so we're protecting the mortar as the bricks are being laid from the cold weather elements. But we'll see a lot of progress here between now and the next time we talk in the new year for brick, for sure. Other accomplishments, almost the entire second floor has all of its interior walls framed, which is great. And now on the first floor, all of the layout and surveying that we do for those walls, that you can't really see. That's a lot of the legwork has been knocked out as well. So we'll start to see walls go up on the first floor as well between that and the next month. As always, I give an update on COVID, and like all of Franklin County, we've had a few cases, and we continue to monitor that and do what we do best, which is communicate concerns and communicate any issues that we have with the district, how that might impact our commitments to deliver the middle school. And thankfully right now we are on schedule, we are on budget, and with Concord Addis and the rest of the design team, we're doing a very good job to make sure that we are on quality as well. So that's my update for this month. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the rest of the board? The one point, and Andy and I just recently did have a conversation, when we're involved in this at a pretty deep level, every little step of the way, from a big picture standpoint, we've got some pretty major transitions that happen this summer. And to really, now's the time to start, the team will start thinking about those and communicating what that are going to look like, and, reminding people that it's the high school that goes in the new middle school while the high school is getting renovated. And I know plans are already in place for when our auditorium spaces are not accessible for a year and a half. So, the real impact to our program, it's, is going to start happening this summer, and probably be some of the more, they'll take some coordination. And I know Andy and the team have been working hard on that, and we'll, as we get into about 3 months from now, start to be sure that we're communicating that really clearly with our families, what all those transitions look like.
You're absolutely right, Jesse. It doesn't just happen. It may appear to those that aren't as closely involved as you and Andy, but it takes, yours and Eric's and Doug's and Andy's involvement early on to plan ahead to make sure that those transitions are seamless.
Yeah, and two things to that. I do know that Doug, Jay, Rob Brown, Sean, and Quint had a meeting to talk about the transition post July 20th-ish, when we are able to take occupancy of that building, and that included, where staff's going to park, where students are going to park, what that transition is going to look like, who's going where, what space we will have, what space we won't have, high school gym space, all of that. So that meeting, that first meeting, I should say, has actually already taken place. So yeah, that's important. And then the second thing, this is really small, but I think important. The principals that are on the call will get a kick out of what I'm about to say. Over winter break, I've also asked Brett to get another dumpster and work collaboratively with all the staff 412 to continue our yeoman's effort of purging classrooms, basement, etc. That's been something we've been working on quite candidly pretty intensely for the last several years, but just so you know, over winter break, we're going to be doing it again.
Great. Don't let them take any of that old stuff into the new middle school. It goes.
Right. Oh, one other thing, if I may, the residents have been amazing as well at communicating. We look for opportunities during non-school hours, and as a result, that happens usually during a holiday time when folks are home with their families. And so we've been trying to schedule this water outage for a while now, and the residents have been amazing at communicating and helping us and the district as well. So thank you all for that. And that's scheduled to actually happen next week. And hopefully it's one of the last ones, if not the last one, that we have to go through.
Yeah, the one the one positive of our moving to distance learning next week is they were able to move that water tap. I think it's Tuesday. Jay, is that right?
The 15th. So yes, Tuesday.
Yeah. And it was scheduled, I think, for December 22nd or something in that.
Yeah, to 21st, 22nd, somewhere around there.
is much better for our neighbors, understandably so. So that's a small win, I guess, in all of this.
It takes communication, and we try to do it the right way the first time. And Colleen and Chris have planned for a very long time to try to be the least impactful, and some communication from the residents and the flexibility of those team members of ours has made it possible. So. Any other questions?
All right. Thank you, Jay.
You're
Doug,
welcome.
you wanna talk just real quick about furniture. Any updates about it? Maybe there aren't.
Andy, really no additional updates other than working closely with Moody Nolan, and we still plan on by end of January having that out to bid. Jay, I didn't know if you wanted to touch on just real quick what you were able to work out on the high school gymnasium too, when we met with Rob as far as usage and.
Oh, yeah. One of the things that, the program, the design team, and that communication has done is how we keep students, staff, in the school district during construction. And we've got one high school gym. And so the flexibility of being able to completely renovate that school within a school calendar season was something that we've been concerned with all along. And our plans when we take over the high school, after the high schoolers move into the middle school in the autumn of 2021, is to create accessibility for the students and staff through the 2021 school season, and basketball season. So I think that goes through the end of March, and so it's still our intent, and through some good planning with the district and Doug, your team, we're able to accommodate that without affecting the overall end date of the project.
Well, that's huge. That makes a big difference. I think we all expected that gym to be offline for a full year and a half, and so the fact that that's cut down now. Of course, we're all going to get used to having 3 gyms open at once, but
Right.
that's a great thing.
Yep. Well, have a Merry Christmas or Happy Holiday season, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks, Doug.
So next on our agenda, Jesse, if I may, is before we transition, I just want to take a moment and extend a heartfelt and say some words of gratitude and appreciation for our principals and Jamie and Chris Dice. They have just been absolutely, positively tremendous. Madeline, Jamie, Angie, Rob, Sean, Chris, but for this amazing team that at the end of the day deeply cares about students, deeply cares about the social, emotional, behavioral, and academic well-being of every single child that walks through the school doors every single day. And their earnest and genuine and authentic commitment to students is truly been remarkable. And it is a privilege to serve and work with each one of them. And it is humbling on a daily basis. I feel so fortunate to serve Grandview Heights, this board, but also this leadership team as superintendent. And so I think it's important just for me to say that. And I always have felt that way, but in this crisis pandemic situation that we've been in, it has just been remarkable to work with such a amazing team of people and educators and professionals who care so much about our community, our students, and our school district. With all that said, we thought it prudent. We've now been in our hybrid model for about 4 months, and it's always good. All organizations, all successful organizations are always being reflective and asking themselves, okay, you know, we've got a pretty good framework here and a pretty good model of our hybrid. It's unique to Grandview. It's pretty disparate from what most other districts are doing. I would argue it's better, but having said all that, what things from those that live, eat, and breathe it every day, the leaders of every building, are going well, and what things might we be able to improve? What ideas might we have? And so I wanted to start with Angie and work our way up all the way to Jamie and Chris, Madeline, to give a sense of how things are going in a reflective way. I would envision that this could then parlay into our ultimately our scheduled board work session sometime I would gather in January-ish, where we can take some of what is shared here today into that work session and brainstorm any additional ideas that we may have. So with that said, and related to that, I specifically asked Amber Nichols and Madeline Partlow to also talk about mental health and wellness of our students and what are some of the things that we are doing. You know, I think this is something that, while I'm speaking on behalf of the entire board, we all feel very strongly about, as evidenced by, you know, quite candidly, the allocation of our resources for trained personnel in this area. And there's a need. It's real. You know, I have a personal lens, as probably most of you know. My wife works in the crisis center at Children's Hospital, and what I can tell you is there's a real need, and students are in crisis. And so it is important that we just update the board on what kinds of things we have in place and what we're doing. So I did ask Amber and Madeline to do that as well. So with that being said, I've also asked them to be brief, just so we're all clear. With that being said, Angie, do you want to kick us off?
Hi, everyone. I have to say, I get to go first in a lot of things. So I'm excited to go first tonight as well. I want to say first, we got some feedback from parents. I didn't do a survey, but lots of parents reached out that our hybrid model and our schedule seem to work extremely well. So we're going to stick with the same schedule that we used in the fall. We have talked a lot about, as a staff, just keep in mind that doing things online takes longer than in the classroom. And so not to overwhelm parents with work, but to make sure that we've got a good pace. When we started the school year, just a couple things about academics. When we started the school year, we had 12% of our students off track in kindergarten. We've never had that in the history of the 8 years I've been here. It's usually 8% or under. So a lot of our students came to us a little bit behind because of the shutdown of kindergarten or preschools. And then when they got here, 27% of them didn't know 4 letters or letter sounds. That was remarkable and astonishing. We'd never had that before. But 91% of our kindergartners now know 26 letters and 26 sounds. So our hybrid model is growing and they are learning, and it is pretty amazing. I also looked at off-track data that we use for MAP every year just to kind of see where we were. I was excited that in reading, we were within 1% where we've been over the last 2 years. So reading seemed to really hang tight. And then math was a little bit lower, and the teachers have reported they've had to slow down a little bit in math, but kids are gaining skills back quickly, and we're making progress there too. Something I'm proud of with our model is our IEP students are coming in the other half of the day. So when they're not online live with their teachers, they are coming in with the intervention specialists. And what I'm really proud of is this year we were able to offer reading intervention on the opposite side of a child's in-person schedule or their asynchronous time. That makes sure that a child's getting a true double dip because they're getting reading with their classroom teacher and then they're getting intervention. So my reading intervention teachers, Billy Sarich and Allison Kakura, worked really hard to deliver online reading intervention. They're both doing an amazing job. And then finally, because I'm supposed to be brief, our PBIS team is working really hard on the learning attributes to kind of help families and students. And we just started this in December, but each month we will focus on a learning attribute. This month was empathy. We sent home an empathy packet for parents, an empathy challenge, places you can volunteer, things you can talk about at the table, books you can read, movies you can read. Each classroom has we're using one common short video clip to talk about as a school and one common book. And then teachers have activities they can do throughout the month of December. And then I'm also hitting empathy in my announcements. In January, it will be perseverance. I think that's it for Stevenson.
Quint?
Briefly for EILMS. At the beginning, we were kind of struggling to get students in the groove. We had a lot of students that were struggling to get all their work turned in a timely manner. We started seeing our ineligibility for athletes really turned into like a 2-3 page report. That alarmed many of our teachers. And so what we did fairly early on was kind of set up study tables for, we piloted with 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students where we brought them in opposite of the time that they were supposed to be in school. So the AM students, we brought them in the PM. The PM students we brought in the AM for an hour to sit with a staff member in the commons area, give them time to get their work done. We created spreadsheets that shared among the staff for students that were missing work, so the monitors and the study tables could look at those spreadsheets, remind students of what they needed to get done and turned into their teachers. We then, after about a month of that, we opened that up to 4th and 5th grade students. Because 4th and 5th grade students are a little younger, they're not quite as independent, we kept them at school over that lunch period time from 11 to 12. So the students that were AM, we kept them. The students that were PM, we invited them in early. Instead of kind of looking at all the breadth of missing work, we had those students concentrate on the work to be done that day. So essentially, if they had homework assigned that morning, they worked on it. If they had homework assigned the previous day, they worked on it. So it was a lot easier for those students to really get caught up. And we've seen a lot of good progress with the students. We're not seeing quite as much missing work and things like that. We did resurrect our Student of the Month, which also is based on learning attributes. This month, we're looking at honesty. So we're looking forward to seeing who is chosen out of the 4th through 8th graders exhibiting honesty. What we have been doing is, like Angie said, we've been personalizing some schedules for IEP students or students that need to come in and work with students or work with teachers kind of on the off time. We have switched some schedules so that students that weren't necessarily thriving in the PM, we've moved them to AM and vice versa. We've worked as an RTI team to kind of work with parents and make some of those changes. So we have been playing around with schedules a little bit and tried to extend the day for some students. We're creating a lot of opportunity support. We are going to look at map testing, maybe not the whole building in January, but we are going to look at those tier 2 students that we want to really keep an eye on. So we're going to use that map test right after the first of the year to kind of progress monitor those students that we want to keep an eye on. Again, I want to say how proud I am of the staff and students who are working so tremendously hard in our hybrid environment. We really have been, I feel, super successful in hybrid. I know a lot of people were disappointed that we're going to have to pivot a little bit to distance learning, but hopefully that's a short-lived kind of thing, and hopefully we can get back and have the students load in the building again after the Christmas holidays. So again, thanks to all the support of the board and the whole team, and I hope I was brief enough.
And I'll just add before we transition to Mr. Brown, EILMS staff building in the last 2 weeks, with respect to quarantining and COVID positive cases got hit pretty hard. So it did require a lot of coverage and selfless service and pulling on the rope. So much appreciated, Quinn, for your leadership and all of
Yeah.
your staff.
Well, and I know Carrie Millette has been doing a fantastic job in really, searching under every stone to find some people to cover classes. And, I know, we've been doing a great job, and we have been able to cover most of those classes where people are quarantined or in isolation because of COVID positive cases. So,
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
Mr. Brown.
Hello, everyone. Just like Quentin and Angie said, it's not easy to be brief, but I'm going to try because there's a lot going on, but I'm going to try to be as brief as possible. This is difficult for students. I know that's obvious for everyone, but students are under stress like I've never seen, which impacts not only their motivation, but also their capacity for learning. And that's really a statement on the pandemic and not our learning mode, because whatever model we choose, that statement's going to be true. So we keep doing things differently. We keep trying new things. We keep adjusting to the data that we have, qualitative, quantitative. For example, our grade level meetings were different this past time. Instead of meeting in grade bands, teachers submitted names of students that they were concerned about. And some of these students, frankly, had straight A's, but they're concerned about their mental health. And so it allowed us to build a schedule of lunch meetings where we could meet about individual students and really have some deep conversations about what we can do intervention-wise across the board, not just academics. Based on the data that we collect through our MTSS program, we have students who attend all sorts of different kinds, not just AM and PM. We do have some students that are doing that through our MTSS program and students on IEPs, but we also have some students who maybe need to attend math twice. And so we've set up some transportation with parents and just, we're trying to truly personalize things and get kids what they need. We've allowed students to change their schedules even into December, which is unheard of. And, although we want to keep high standards, many students are having a very difficult time with the course load that they selected under the impression that we would have a normal school year. The course load, the schedule was selected by students in January, February, of last year. So we're really allowing that adjustment to occur. We also we run a lot of classes at the high school. For our size, we have a lot of classes. And so this year we looked at some of the classes that had some low numbers. Speech, for example, really had some low numbers. So we're not running those courses. Instead, what we're doing is those teachers are part of our MTSS program where we are getting support for students because our students, frankly, are behind. They have a lot of outstanding assignments. They need a lot of help. They are not allowing themselves the grace that a pandemic requires. They are their toughest critic. And again, we want to keep those high standards and we want to keep the focus on the learning, but they're really having a hard time. So we're really just trying to build as much capacity as we can to support students. On that note, on Monday, we're going to have sort of a reset day where it's a day of support, it's a day for catch up, it's a day for clubs, because those are important to give kids that connection. It's good timing before the end of the semester to get things caught up, to help study retakes, just trying to get everyone in a better academic standing. And not that the sky's caving in, it's not. If you look at our quantitative data, D's and F's are slightly up from where they were this time last year. They're only 4% higher. We were expecting more, and there's a lot of reasons for that I won't get into because it'll take a lot of time. Qualitatively talking with teachers, they're only slightly behind in their curriculum where they usually are this time of year. If you take the quarantines out of attendance, the attendance has actually been better than previous years. Now with quarantine, it's been quite challenging because that takes kids out of school for usually a full 2 weeks. So that's been quite challenging. If you look at our PSAT data, kids who took it in 10th grade, and then again this year as 11th graders, they increased by 3%. Overall, we took a little bit of a dip, but we also had 106 students take it versus 91 the previous year. And many of those students that we sort of nudged to take it this year are some students who have some struggles and some challenges, but we really wanted them to take it. So there's a lot that goes into that number as well, like most other things. On the mental health side of things, I'm sending out our Connect survey tomorrow to make sure that kids have that adult that they're connected to. We're trying to keep our clubs running. We're trying to build in a day of passion where, and we've done this before at the high school for even prior to me being there, where, you know, we take a day or maybe even a half a day where teachers can step back from the curriculum and talk about their passions, and students can teach about their passions, and it works really well. A lot of our tier 3 students are speaking with Centero. Even students that, like I said, have straight A's are having a really hard time. So working with families, helping them set up with inside and outside of support so that they can get the help that they need. I'm going to stop because I can go on forever because there's a lot of things going on right now. But thank you for the opportunity to share.
I'm going to ask Madeline and Amber Nichols to present next if they're willing and able.
Hi, thank you. It's our privilege to be sharing with the board tonight. And I'm going to mostly be introducing Amber, but just so you know, 5 years ago when I started in Grandview Heights, kids had mental health issues and social emotional issues. Those were, for the most part, our school counselors, our school psychologists, and our intervention specialists did their best to deal with those needs. And as we assessed those things, we realized that there was just a huge need for more expertise in mental health. We had the Centero services, we had our school counselors, our psychologists were doing some of those roles, but in the society we live in, more and more kids were experiencing those problems. So I really appreciated when Andy and the board and Jamie were all very supportive of us actually bringing in a person of expertise to help provide leadership in our mental health programming. When we made the original hire, it's primarily was done on the basis of students with disabilities having those needs, but we also set this up so that it could be a collaborative position of expertise to be used whenever needed. I don't know if you know the Student Services Department, our oversight is in many areas collaborative with the principals. Special education, gifted services, EL services, and counseling are in the principal's building under their leadership, but we're also doing collaboration in a big way to look at the programming in those areas. So when Amber Nichols was hired 4 years ago and started on a part-time schedule, the more she worked with folks, the more we recognized the need. And I want to take this time before introducing Amber just to say thank you to the board for supporting the addition of the mental health program and the increase of that to full-time services, because this is one of the busiest people in the district. She, in almost 40 years of education, is the finest I've ever worked with, and she is providing huge leadership to our district. So what I've asked her to do is to, she herself has well over 20 some years of experience, but she's being consulted, as you might guess, more and more and more, not just for those special education students, but for many of our regular students who are all struggling in this pandemic, who have these social emotional issues. And she works collaboratively with our school counselors, with Centero, with our school psychologists, and closely with our intervention specialist. And it's that collaborative effort that makes our program so strong. So at this point, I would like to introduce Amber Nichols, and she has reached out. She's talking with all those folks all the time, and she's going to share some of what her services and their services look like right now during this time of pandemic. So Amber.
Hi, thank you very much for that lovely introduction, Madeline. I appreciate that. I hope everyone can hear me. I'm always nervous with technology. I'm not great at that. Thank you very much, Andy, especially for asking Madeline and I to speak about this. I have had the pleasure and the honor of working with Andy for many, many years, including when he was a building assistant principal and then a principal, and he has always been enormously supportive of mental health in the schools, and recognizing that the school environment is a very unique environment, and how we deliver those services has to be special and unique as well to meet those needs of our students. Through the pandemic, we continue to provide robust, tiered mental health services for our students. We know that across the nation, across the world, 20% of students between the ages of 5 and 18 will have a diagnosable mental health concern. The pandemic has certainly exacerbated that, and those that are vulnerable are experiencing more intense concerns. And then those perhaps that weren't before this started, things have happened in their world, in their family, in their environment, changes in school, and has affected them as well. Certainly, while this is a collective world crisis, we are all experiencing a little bit differently, and we have different needs and different things that are happening, and we want to make sure that we respond in the individual manner that a student needs. Just briefly want to share with you what we knew anecdotally has been proven through some research. There was a systematic review of some research studies that examined the impact of social isolation and loneliness on the mental health of children and adolescents. And what it found is that these factors of social isolation and loneliness will increase depression and anxiety in children and adolescents. But what we found is that it is the duration, how long the social isolation lasts, rather than the intensity of the loneliness plays a part in what that looks like later. Those things can affect depression actually up to 9 years later. So that gives us a little bit of guidance when we're looking at providing services for students. As someone mentioned earlier, our unique hybrid situation is fabulous for kids because it's providing consistency and structure on a daily basis. We are laying eyes on them physically every single day. They come into our building, they know exactly what to expect, what their schedule is going to look like. There is the safety of the same adults that care about them, interacting with them, and laying eyes on them every day. So that is really, really helpful. What we want to make sure that we're looking at and what our teachers are viewing every day are symptoms like worry, sadness, fear, grief, and safety. Do I feel physically safe in my building? Do I feel psychologically safe in my building? And that's perception. So our staff is wonderful at recognizing that it's not whether we know that we're doing all these things to make kids feel safe, but do they feel safe? And listening to what their responses are and then adjusting what we're doing so that they can feel that way. And then when they feel that way, their stress response calms down and they're able to learn. A couple people mentioned math concerns. Math is cumulative. So when stress is involved and when a child's stress response is activated, their prefrontal lobe cannot focus in that moment. And so they're losing instruction, and that especially affects math because it's adding up every single day. So when they're feeling calm and ready to go because they have that consistency and structure, then we see learning and academic success improve. We are working really hard with those tiered responses. Oftentimes, I think we think of mental health simply as the counseling or the therapeutic piece, but in fact, the principals who spoke are providing mental health, our teachers are providing mental health, our cafeteria workers, our secretaries, we're all providing that for our children as they come in through our doors, through connection. That is the number one thing that we can offer to provide success and continuity in their learning, and we're doing that. Our tier one are those things that all kids get and need, those things like PBIS. Kids walking in and getting their temperature checks. Who knew that was mental health? But in fact, they're seeing a smiling face every day. That is a symbol of, hey, they're aware of what's going on and this is safety, and they're saying hi to me and looking at me every day. So when I see a child 4 days and maybe they come in the 5th and that's a day I don't see a smile while I'm taking a temperature check, the temperature's fine, but I don't see that smile and that connection, so I can follow up later. That's a great example of something that we're doing at that tier one level. Our lunches, when kids go in and pick up their lunches or their breakfast every day, having that smiling face and knowing this child picked up lunch consistently for 2 weeks, now they didn't do it for 2 days. Or maybe they've come in and asked for an extra lunch or an extra breakfast. That also gives me a clue that I might need to check on some things for them. Our MTSS, as Rob talked about at length, is our multi-tier symptoms of systems of support is wonderful at being able to check and get lots of eyes and ears on a situation with a child, and we can dig a little bit deeper. Everyone has a different perspective. So how someone responds in algebra might be a little bit different in social studies, and then a little bit different in study skills or photography. And having that group come together and share and give ideas really gives us a nice perspective. One of the things I love about our district is the ability to take different perspectives and different disciplines. So our school nurse, our counselors, our psychologists, our principals, myself, our teachers, and give that lens. That is a true way to respond to mental health needs and get to what the true concern might be. Then we take those kids that are struggling a little bit more and we add to it, and we go into our level 2 or our tier 2. And those are things like groups they might be involved in. We might be pulling them out then for counseling and meeting individually. We're trying different kinds of interventions behaviorally and academically. I do want to speak one brief moment about behavior. We often view behavior as a problem, right? If somebody is acting out then or disrupting something, I personally love behavior because that gives me a clue as to what is going on in that inner world of the child. Kids don't have the ability like adults do, and sometimes adults don't always have it either, to really calmly say, this is what's bothering me and this is what I need from you. So behavior is that window into what's happening so we can help them. When I get worried, and I think when my colleagues get worried, is when there are things going on internally and we don't have any behaviors. As Rob said, those straight A students that are experiencing a lot of worry or anxiety, and we want to get to the root of that. That's where doing things like the Connect survey that he's going to do tomorrow, SOS, signs of suicide, which we did in 7th grade earlier this month. And we're going to do it in January at the high school. That provides a screening, depression screening for all teens. And it provides us an opportunity to make sure that there is a trusted adult. And if there's not, because we have them fill out a sheet, then we can go back and help them figure out who could that be and who could we link them to. And then our T3 supports are that I'm a tier 3 support as far as when we know that a student needs consistent support counseling wise, and then also referring out and linking them very carefully to outside clinicians that might need to provide help for them, as well as other resources for families. And I think the most wonderful thing about our staff is that we have so many connections in our community and around our county. So when families call, we can really individualize what's going on and get them what they need when they need it. Every day I get to see moments of grace and hope and support through our staff and children for each other. And I'm really proud to be part of this effort to help kids. And it's a slow process and we're going to take one day at a time. I tell kids every day, including today, that this will be over at some point. We'll get there. But the only way to get there is to get there. We just have to keep walking. And we have to remember that we're all different and we're all going to need different things at different times. Brian Stork shared a quote with me yesterday, and I loved it because it just made me think about COVID and how we're responding to it. And you probably have all seen it, but it said, we are not all in the same boat. We are all in the same storm. Some of us have yachts, some have canoes, some are drowning. Just be kind and help whoever you can. And I think I get to witness that every day. So I also want to say one quick thing. When I present at different conferences or have communication with colleagues around the state and around the country, they're amazed that my position is here. And they always want to know, how can I do that? How can we get that in our school district? So I do want to thank you all very much for supporting that. It truly makes a difference for kids and their families. So thank you.
So I just want to take a quick moment. And, I've been in education now, 22 years, and in leadership, say, Oh, 15 of that. And, you know, Dr. Partlow is one of the finest educators, and this is a topic about which she feels great passion and advocacy. And so thank you, Madeline, for all you do and your leadership. And, you know, I've had the privilege of working with Amber, as she mentioned, not just in Grandview, but in previous lives and in previous districts. And she's one of the finest. So we are so fortunate and blessed to have your leadership, as well as your just sound practices and advocacy for kids, as well as staff. And I probably speak for everyone on this call that it is nice to know and hear you say that this will come to an end. I hope you're right. I'm ready for that day. Oh, so thank
Andy?
you.
Could I just say one thing before Amber goes? She's very, very humble, and she's probably one of the most consulted people in our entire district. Staff members, students, principals, me. I mean, when we're aware of a concern or a need of a student, she is the expert. She is the person that we want to get ideas from. And I believe that she has built a relationship so that, as I was saying before, she has helped our department spread out and work collaboratively with all of the building principals, with all of the counselors, with all of the intervention specialists. And she's a common thread in that teamwork across the district. So just, and again, thank you to the board for the position, the person. It's our privilege.
Yeah, well said, Madeline. Okay, we've got two more here. Chris Dice, you want to give a tech update? And just real quick before he does that, I think probably all of you already know this, but I want to say thank you to him and his entire team for really doing yeoman's work and doing it in short order, not only on the creative problem solving side of the house, but also just rolling up the sleeves and getting it done in terms of our ability to virtually interface the instructor into the classroom when students were physically present, and being able to do that in a timely way. So thanks to him and his team for that. I know there were a lot of late evenings. So Chris, with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Andy. You know, you kind of took some of the words right out of my mouth. I just want to say that, you know, the team, Mark, Jessica, Jamie, Matt, Emmanuel, Evan, and Lisa, they honestly, you know, they have come together, and it really honestly is a team of people that have just redesigned kind of what we do as a department to refine kind of, you know, how we support our students, our staff, and our families. And it's been a challenge without a doubt, but I tell you what, it has been a lot of fun. Flexibility, I think, has been the key there. As a team, you know, we kind of just, wherever anything needs done, everybody jumps up, and not once has anybody kind of not wanted to jump up. So it's almost like, who's going to cover this? And then 3 people jump up to cover it. So I am very grateful, as you said earlier, humbled to work with everybody here. You know, and truly, the team does care for our staff and our students, and they go the extra mile to make sure that the technology that we use works, so that teachers can teach and students can learn. And, you know, kind of we're in awe of the staff, how they have adjusted, the teachers and the rest of the district. You know, Amber just mentioned, you know, she worried about technology working or presenting online. She's not alone. I mean, this is very, very common, and people are dealing with all this time. So the normalcy that people are dealing with, you know, what we're doing right now and having to do with a classroom on a career that you've been doing for, you know, 10, 20 years, it's challenging. But we want to alleviate that as much as we can with our staff. We want to make sure that we are making it a very easy place to work, and they understand that the technology is just a tool. So this pandemic has really confirmed exactly what a lot of us has known for a long time. And some people have been very worried about for, you know, a decade or two. You know, like you, Andy, I've been in education now almost 24, 25 years, spent, you know, 15, 16 years of that in the classroom. And as I made the transition into technology and utilized technology, a lot of people are very weary about technology replacing the teacher. And if anything, this pandemic has solidified the fact that technology cannot replace a teacher. Technology is just a tool, and it's our job to make sure that tool works. But, you know, we're working with our staff, we're working with our teachers and our students to make sure they're just using that tool. And it's been very, very humbling to do so. So we have teachers in the district, and you just talked about a few of them. So Barb McCauley, Liz McClellan, Emily Meister, just a few of them who have, due to COVID, they are teaching from home, and they're Zoom or Google Meet back into their classroom. And so they can see their entire class. They can use their devices, their iPad to teach a lesson, but see all of the students, all of them. I mean, this is so hard for them to do this, and you wouldn't even ever know it. It is a challenge for them, but they make it look so smooth and so easy. And I'm just so proud of them for jumping in and leveraging that technology to meet the needs of their students. So again, I just feel so many people are going above and beyond, and I'm just so grateful for them. So really, it's my pleasure to work with this team, this entire team, everybody that's on this Zoom call, to support the staff and students. And, as you said earlier, Mr. Culp, very, very humbled by this organization and by the people that I work with. So back to you.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks for your leadership. Really appreciate it. Dr. Lusher, you're batting cleanup.
I guess not much left to say at this point. I think you've heard a theme here about that balance between the academic needs of our students, but also their social, emotional, and mental well-being. And, in times of crisis and challenge, as we've worked through a systematic flurry of activity, in particular the last 2 weeks, this team has come together at 6 o'clock in the morning every day, seeing if buildings can be manned. And you heard Quint talk about how are we going to make sure that in the winter months that we are monitoring student progress and supporting kids at a personal level. So what you heard weren't structural solutions in some cases, but more of a personalized plan for kids. But then ultimately too, as an organization, we meet every single week to talk about each one of these threads. So as I would kind of sum up where we are as a district, we are reacting daily to the needs of our students and to the needs of our staff. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that this is challenging. But when we look at the long-term impact on our students and the data that we can use to help ensure that they have what they need, we have the best people possible to help us continue to support these kids. To Andy's point earlier, to Amber's point, in terms of the staying power of our staff, in terms of the learning experience, we'll continue to monitor, where they are academically. We'll continue to provide social, emotional, and mental well-being supports. But again, when we think about that long-term, whether it's this year's continuous improvement plan into next year's continuous improvement plan, you're going to see our response as an organization addressing the academic, social, emotional, and mental needs of our students. So I think that's really important, because as a parent, as a professional, I know we all deliberate and we think about these things, to a point where you just, sometimes you're paralyzed with fear, like our students are. So for us, as we think about whether it's the PSAT, and we saw that the kids actually did very well, and we are looking at our data and it doesn't look terrible, we're not burying our head in the sand. We're certainly not an echo chamber. We're pushing back and thinking about ways that we can continue to improve and plan. But what I would say is that, our one shared resource is time. And although our hybrid is fantastic in terms of getting kids here every day, a frequency of every single day, you'll hear the stress in our AP teachers' voices. You'll hear the worry as they come into Rob's office and they just don't have enough time to get through the density of their content. You'll see our RLS teachers crying because we're now transitioning to distance learning, and they're not going to get to see their guided reading groups in the same way that they would have if they were walking through our doors. So when I say the struggle is real, I cannot stress that to you enough in terms of what we're seeing top to bottom, pre-K through 12. And so I just, as I think about the end in mind, that end in mind is going to be a long-term planning process for us that's deeply tied to our continuous improvement plan as an organization. And so the fact that we have intact a K-12 Wellness for Life program, that we already have a mental health specialist, that we already have a fully functioning MTSS framework in our district, gives us the anchors to make sure that we are proverbially putting picking the right wall to put our ladder on as we think about the long-term outcome for our students. So I would just ask if there are any questions of the board. Our team is here to answer those. I know that we're all feeling the varied viewpoints, right? I joked, one of our first meetings is that I feel a bit like Goldilocks. It's too hot, it's too cold, it's just right. And, we're still trying to find the just right piece. So I would just open it up to our board members, and thank you for your time tonight. I know this was a little bit longer than we were supposed to go, but that tends to be typical for us. But any questions that you have that you'd like to ask our team, we are more than ready to answer those.
First of all, Dr. Lusher, I think the principals all stayed within their time limit just fine.
Fair, that's fair.
No, in all seriousness, I mean, I know as one of 5 board members, and I think the rest of the board would agree, this is the type of information that we love to hear. It's similar. I noticed that the building reports later on the agenda were pretty meaty this time around too. So it really gives us a sense to, stick our noses in, but still keep our hands out of those day-to-day operations. So I, for one, really appreciate that in all seriousness. So I know we covered a lot and really talked about our entire program K-12 along with multiple students and needs. I'll open it up to my colleagues on the board if there's any questions or comments they want to make on what we've heard.
Well, a lot to digest. So thank you for all that. A lot of acronyms too. Tried to follow along with everything. I guess, it's a big question, and maybe, I don't need a broad answer, but maybe start with you, Jamie. Just thinking about, I heard a lot of good input on reacting and tweaking and continuous improvement, but thinking about what do we need for next semester to make it better. I definitely heard some themes of concern about really stretching ourselves to keep up in the first semester and really not wanting to fall behind further in second semester. So if we are staying in this mode, under the hypothetical that we'll be in hybrid again, what are we making adjustments for next semester? And is there anything in particular that you need from the board, whether it's resources or support or something else that would make that happen?
So that's a great question. And if I may, I'm going to answer it kind of like in a two-phase piece. So yes, as we look at the second portion of our calendar year, I think leveraging technology in terms of what Chris has been able to do with our teachers will be critical. So there could be an additional cost associated with some of the capacity that he's built. I think also with some of our densely filled content, like our AP courses, I think our teachers are trying to maximize creative ways to build more time for students to be able to come on campus, but then also be able to sort of double up some of those instructional times. So I think they've been able to tweak and refine there. So that's not necessarily a resource, but it will build in some more capacity for time. I think that as we look at summer, Eric, we've got to really think about, last year we were able to use some of the CARES monies, and Beth was helpful in helping us, actualize that funding to be able to provide intervention for our students. And I think that that is going to have to be something that we focus on. Not only intervention, but then also, that tier 1 piece for all students, because think about this, we're still tied to that agricultural calendar, right? And these kids arguably have had half the time at school, if you will. That's not the case, but on paper, that's exactly what it feels like. So what does our summer programming look like, and being able to offer more robust options for kids? Because as we know, that regression piece is real, not so much for our demographic, but I do think, to your point, that negative 4-point root size effect with math, that's going to become exponential if we don't do something over the summer to make sure our kids are getting that duration and frequency of some type of intervention, instruction, or enrichment. So I do think that as we think about summer planning, that will be sort of that phase 2. But as we look at our second semester, I think our teachers and our tech team and our coaches have been just masterful at looking at what's worked well, what hasn't, and like literally what we can let go of, and then where we can use technology to also leverage some capacity to be able to get some more instructional face time with our kids. The one thing that I would say is just fantastic is, when a teacher needs to see a student, they can do it in their off time and literally walk into the building. So they're getting a double dip of Algebra 2 or geometry. So some of those very personalized plans for kids are, the standard of practice in our district. So I think our principals continue to meet weekly. And then we continue to meet weekly as a leadership team to look at those operations pieces where we can support. So I'll continue to keep you posted, but thank you for that question. I sort of see that in two phases, like our second semester and then summer planning as well.
Any other questions or comments? I'll just say sort of in summary, once again, thank you for all that. I mean, at the end of the day, I think there's a real balance to be struck between, academic press, what can we do without burning staff and kids out, and their mental wellness. And I sort of heard all that. I mean, at the end of the day, the high school principal come out and me, high school transcripts, ACT scores, SAT scores, AP scores, they still matter and they're still there. And not to sort of piggyback on what Eric said. And obviously, I alone can't make a commitment, but, think outside the box. And if there's MOUs or things we need to do to build extra time in some of those content rich heavy courses where, summer might be after those assessments occur. I think I'd like to think this board would be open to either reallocating resources we have or look at resource allocation, where we need to for our kids. But the big picture, the 10,000 foot view, it's nice to hear about academic press and the supports and just a true, genuine understanding that there's also only so much capacity. And I think if we're honest about that with ourselves and with our community, we're going to be better off. So thank you for all of that. If there's nothing else, then we'll move into approving the minutes from the regular board meeting on November 11th, 2020 that were in the packet. If I could have a motion for those minutes, please.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Bodie, a second. Second, Mr. Gousset. Any questions or discussions on the minutes? All right, Beth, please call a roll.
Mr. Bodie,
Aye.
Mrs. Gebhardt,
Aye.
Mr. Gousset,
Aye.
Mr. Truitt,
Aye.
and Ms. Wassmuth.
Aye.
Once again, I think we referenced earlier 3 things under the reports section of the agenda: buildings and ground reports. Once again, I noticed that those were particularly thorough and meaty and enjoyed reading through those. I think any questions I have were answered by the presentation by the building principals and departments. Are there any other questions or discussions or comments from the board on the building and department reports? I do know with everything else going on, that's probably the last thing on everyone's list to do, but Andy, I know myself, and I think the board appreciates getting those, and I think that's good information to have. So Mr. Culp, I'll turn it over to you for the superintendent's report.
So first and foremost, as all of you know, important to mention that we are going to pivot to distance learning on this coming Monday, and that will be a stay through I believe it's January 8th, and we'll return to hybrid on January 11th. Couple insights on that. With respect to the framework that all of us worked on through several iterations in public board meetings, we were checking every box. And by checking every box, I mean we were hitting every threshold. That isn't why we ultimately decided to pivot to distance learning, even though we were checking all of the box in our COVID-19 framework that we established. It was an operational decision. And by operational decision, I mean, we were really struggling with covering classes. The number of subs that we had, in particular 412, were significant. Also, at the risk of not alarming anyone, we did see our first linked COVID case in our district. It was a staff to staff, but when you do see that, it does cause some anxiety. I want to extend a huge and heartfelt thank you to our entire staff for the last 4 months, to include our kitchen staff, our custodians, our secretaries, our teachers, our paras, our leadership team, our administrators, our counselors. Our Board of Education has just worked tirelessly to try and do all that they can to keep students physically present in our hybrid for as long as they can. And I think we were one of the first, if not the first, districts to start back in hybrid, and we were one of the last to go out of hybrid, and we wouldn't have but for that operational decision. Quick update on that, and then I'll pivot to something else. On our dashboard, I believe as of today, we have 55 quarantined and 15 COVID positive cases. So both of those numbers are some of the highest that we've seen to date. I do want to take a moment and congratulate our board president, our very own Jesse Truitt, a belated celebration, but no less sincere. During the school closure, Mr. Truitt was recognized by OSBA with an award of achievement. This award is bestowed on school board members who achieve a milestone service mark based on their continued learning and service in Ohio public schools. Congratulations to our very own board president, Jesse Truitt. Also, I'd be remiss if we are on time, on budget, and on quality, as Jay said. And again, in all of this unique and unprecedented times, it is always mentally healthy, at least for me, to do a tour. And I had an opportunity to do a tour last night, and things are looking really great. And in keeping with theme with the wonderful presentation we had by Dr. Partlow and Amber Nichols, Centero, which is the community agency partnered with Grandview Heights Schools, and we do have a full-time LPCC counselor assigned to Grandview. Centero is offering prevention workshops aimed at teaching students developmentally appropriate, healthy coping skills for the managing of the ups and downs of the holiday season and winter break. And that there's a link there that we've sent out. So I wanted to share that with everyone as well.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Culp on his superintendent report or comments about any of the topics he brought up?
Really quickly, if I could.
Absolutely.
We had one, I want to thank everyone we stayed in hybrid as long as physically humanly possible. So hats off to that. One of the things you mentioned was coverage. While we are on resetting mode, do we have plans, anything, hiring a building sub, looking at that, increasing sub rate? I could be way out of bounds here. Call me out if I'm out here, but
yeah.
So or is that a Franklin County one? Because I know in my high school we had 10 uncovered classes today. So
a couple things. One, our fill rate, ironically, in the last 2 weeks has been higher than it was ever. And the reason that occurred, in my judgment, is because so many other districts had gone to distance learning, and the pool of candidates to sub is drawn throughout Franklin County. So we were able to increase our fill rate the last 2 weeks, not decrease it. So that's helpful. However, the volume of absenteeism was so great, we were still presented with challenges. So right now we do have 3 full-time, we do have a full-time building sub in each building. Additionally, we hired a 4th floater, and that's where we are right now. So, and I feel like that, knock on wood, has been working. But even with all of that, the volume of quarantining and COVID positive of staff just was creating a real challenge in our organization, and really beginning to question the value of, even though we were able to bring kids physically and have someone in there, the value of the learning that was going on. So that's operationally why we chose to pivot. I just want to take a moment and rewind. One of the specific subsets of our organization I failed to mention, which I can't believe I did, is our nurses. So we as you know, hired a brand new nurse this year, and Amy Elliott, and 2 additional nurse parapros, one of which is an RN. So all 3 of them are new to our organization, which in a normal year would present some anxiety and challenge. But I just can't say enough about this team of amazing people. I'll share just one quick anecdote, and I promise it will be quick. On Thanksgiving morning, about 8:30 a.m., my phone starts beeping and texting, And it's from Amy Elliott, our new school nurse, because we just got a COVID positive, and she just wanted me to know, and that she's doing the contact tracing and calling parents. Now, this is on Thanksgiving morning, folks. I mean, the dedication of that team, not just her, but Tracy and Bree, are exceptional. So I would be remiss if I didn't also say that. So thank you.
Thank you. Anything else for Mr. Call?
Can I just ask for a policy? I know that the letter went out via email to everybody yesterday saying that the plan is to resume the hybrid on January 11th. I mean, that's pretty much barring some unforeseen circumstance. And if so, you would have a further communication, but that is the plan at this point. Like, we're going back on the 11th.
100%. And so part of when I say things like operationally, I want to give a specific example. By the way, great question, Emily. Thank you for asking that. So one of the challenge, or one of the realities of this break, and I know that it's actually longer than 2 weeks, but it's a 2-week break from school, 9 educational quote unquote days. What this will allow us to do is reset our dashboard. And so what does that mean, reset our dashboard? So right now we have 11 by the way, I may be off 1 or 2, and if I am, I apologize. I'm not doing it on purpose, but I believe we have 11 positive staff COVID cases. And I think we have another 8 or 9 quarantine staff. I'm pretty darn close. That will reset that dashboard when we return on the 11th, such that there aren't. Now, is it possible that 1 or 2 will hit over winter break? Yes, but the odds of that, I'm hoping, because I think that I know our staff will make good choices over winter break. So what this will allow us to do is on the 11th, when we do return to hybrid, because that is our plan, that dashboard will be reset, and we will be dealing with, in essence, a full staff, barring some sort of catastrophic issue that occurs. So let me say just one more time. Our plan is to return to our hybrid on Monday, January 11th, with a reset dashboard.
Right. So I don't have any idea how many people are watching this tonight or not, but I mean, you might put out, how many?
14.
14, so not that many. But the big decision they were worried about happened yesterday. So everyone decided to take the night off. You know, I don't know if you want to put out some kind of letter to everyone, or maybe it already was included there to enough, but the point, I know that the teachers will make good choices. I know that by and large, most people do make good choices, but you know, I do feel like everybody in this community really wants their kids to be educated in person to the extent possible. But if we're going to prioritize education, we need to show that in our actions. So, you know, the 14 people watching is not enough to make a difference. And they're probably already making great choices, I'm sure. But, you know, I just would implore the community to continue to make the good choices that are necessary in order to keep educating our kids in person to the extent possible.
And, you know, maybe I'll do, I'll think about this, but sometimes I feel the emails fall on deaf ears, even though there's nothing being said. Maybe I'll do a video, just a plea of, hey, we're in this together. It's going to take all of us doing our part to wear a mask, keep 6 feet of distancing, making good choices. And the more that we all do that and are committed to being part of something bigger than ourselves, the better chance we have of not returning on January 11th, because we are, but staying in the hybrid model for a longer period of time, provided that we do those things. And so I implore you, if that is important to you, do your part and hold one another accountable. I think that might be a good idea.
You know, and if I could piggyback on this, and for those of you that heard me say this before, I'll try not to go too much on a soapbox, but, you know, when we look at our case rate data, and, you know, we have that by school district, and people seem surprised, even though it's out there and it's public, that Grandview as a school district, so it's Grandview and Marble Cliff combined, has had one of the highest case rate numbers from the beginning. I mean, we were the highest. I don't think we've ever been below 4. I'm looking at just the most recent report in front of me now. And, I think all of us, myself included, you almost want to explain that way initially. Well, we're small. Well, that's why it's a case rate. So it corresponds among different size areas. Well, it's going to fluctuate up and down a little bit. I've said that. Well, it hasn't. And, I don't know if I, with my family, have made the best decisions along the way. I think we have. But I don't know. And I think that we just need to look at that. And it's hard not to be hypersensitive. I mean, the vast majority of people have been very reasonable and respectful, even if they don't agree with the decision. But, we have people in this community that email us using the word hoax about COVID, and so just I think sometimes we forget that exists, and it does. And so, or people that can't wear a mask correctly who are grown adults. And so, if that case rate is a reflection of our community's ability to social distance, not travel, and make some sacrifice. Now, I don't know if it is or not. I'm not a scientist, but it would seem like we overall are doing relatively poorly then as a community. And so, in our leadership roles, maybe it's vast overreach that a school board's talking about adult behavior. Maybe there's a leadership void there and we need to. I mean, I've struggled with that a lot. And, but I think we need to look at that, and that's important to be said, because the vast irony is some of the folks that want all our kids to be in school all the time right now are the people that don't think the precautions are that important. The do that we need, not everybody, but there are some folks in that, that call it a hoax, and that's a problem, and that's a problem in our community. And I don't think now's a time to hide behind political correctness to say everything's okay if it's not.
Right. And yeah, I agree with all that. And I don't want to lecture or not either. And likewise, I know that I've made, wrong decisions at times, but all you can do is try to do better. But we've asked a lot of our teachers, and they've done a great job. But, I think, I've talked with lots of people to know that when families aren't behaving, so to speak, per Governor DeWine's orders, your kids go and they talk about it at school. So don't think it's not.
It's called a code of silence.
Yeah.
That's actually a title for it. I mean, not joking. That's a serious thing that exists with parents and school districts, the code of silence.
Yeah. So, it's scary. It's scary for teachers. We're asking a lot, and we all want to do the best we can. So it's a community effort. And so just driving that home again.
Just to quickly add, Andy, I like, you're brainstorming about, how can we get the message out? I do think there is an opportunity with the kids directly. We have 2 more days, and hearing a message. We have the principals here, maybe thinking about how to best get out that message. The kids, they're making choices too, all the way from kindergarten on up. And, just like they're leaders in some things, like energy consumption, and, it can start with the kids and work its way to the whole family. There's an opportunity there too.
Just as an aside, I don't know if you guys have seen it. This will be quick, Molly, I promise. I thought Clark Kellogg was a former OSU basketball player, and the governor had him do a commercial. Maybe because I'm such a huge basketball fan, it really resonated with me. I don't know, but I thought he did an incredible job on that commercial. If you haven't seen it, you can Google, Clark Kellogg, COVID-19 commercial, and it really is a powerful message, similar in to what all of you are saying.
I was going to say, if there's not a season's greetings from our district leadership and reminder about COVID safety, I'm going to be very, very disappointed in all of you, considering our technology prowess. You just set yourself right up for it, Mr. Culp. Walked right on in.
And let's look, folks. We've had a decision point this week, and I think anytime pressure builds up, that there's a little relief. But this is going to tax our leadership team, our teachers, and our governance team, for the remainder of this school year, and potentially into next school year. We don't know. So I like that we're 6 months along and that we're collaborating very well. the message, I think, should definitely be more carrots than sticks. But I do think at a certain point, not tonight, but there may see some discussion. Do we need some more stringent policy procedures if there is a code of science and a kid comes to school that should have been quarantined? Is that a code of conduct violation, just like if they brought something else dangerous into the building and knew it? Like I said, I think in this community, and school districts do better when they lead with carrots and positivity and not sticks, but the sticks are there for the protection of the students. And so I think there's some really serious things we may need to think about as a governance team over the next month or so. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. But there's a lot to process and digest. Any other questions for Mr. Cole? All right, under board policy, we just have a first reading on 7 policies, I believe. I had the opportunity to look through these. I only have one.
Hey, Jesse?
Yes.
I think you skipped over Beth.
I did. I used to skip over Andy, and I'm like, well, let's put Andy before finance so I don't do that. There must be something about 3 things on that thing that my little mind can't get itself around. So I apologize, Beth, and thank you, Eric, for correcting me.
No problem at all. I am going to share my screen here and then give you all a brief update. Okay, can you guys see that? Yeah, okay. So I'm going to start with just some quick general fund highlights. The first thing that I wanted to point out is that the budget to actual report has been updated, the November financials with the numbers from the October forecast. So you'll see some of the percentages that I report in this section have changed just a little bit, and it's because of that. So just real quickly, the taxes, the tax allocation, the Grandview yard money, those are all semi-annual settlements, and we are where we expect to be with all 3 of those. Same with the state funding, that's monthly, but we're right on target with what we knew we were going to get this year. Our interest for the month was just over $34,000 in our general fund. And then looking at our expenditures, we're just under 42% in terms of our fiscal year to date budget. And we're just under that with about 40% of our budget spent. So that's where we expect to be. Looking at our construction fund, our October interest earnings were just over $83,000. Our project to date interest earnings, and I report these net of the investment advisory fees, just over 1.1 million. Our soft costs, we have spent just about 48%. Construction costs, we've spent 14.5, and our fund balance is 45.1 million as of November 30th. And then looking at our permanent improvement levy fund, we've not had a lot of activity going on in this fund so far this year. The fund balance is about 609,000. We are actively working on a 5-year capital plan. The Finance Committee has looked at a draft of that. There's one section that we continue to work with Concord Addis, our owner's rep, and actually we'll be working a little bit with our commissioning agent to kind of solidify maintenance plans and budgets for our new facilities. So current needs, we're in need of a stadium scoreboard. Estimates are about $25,000 plus installation, and that's for a pretty basic, similar to what we have now. A couple stadium storage sheds near the baseball field, and then also over at the end of the football stadium. We have had that in our plans as well. We've looked at a couple different options, and we have gotten a quote recently for about $16,000. So those are a couple fairly urgent things that we are going to have to address soon within our PI fund. So kind of switching gears to bond retirement fund, I wanted to kind of revisit what we talked a little bit about last month with the bond millage rate setting process for 2021. So we talked a little bit about the steps of that process and how, you know, when we pass this, or even before we pass this bond levy, you know, we made a commitment to the public that we would be very transparent. We would share annually exactly how that process works, how much Grandview Yard money we're going to be using to help offset those debt payments and offset those millage collections. And so I have some more information as a follow-up to last month that I just wanted to share. So I had mentioned last month that I had done the certification to the county auditor. That was done on November 3rd. And basically that tells them how much do we have on hand, what are the required debt payments next year, and then what other sources of funds do we have? And that's the key for us right there. The other sources, we have $808,000 that we are going to be using from Grandview Yard revenue towards making the debt payments next year. So that is the, you know, one of the really important keys in the calculation for our millage rate. So since that time, the county auditor calculated that new millage, sent it to me on December 1st, and that will go into effect on January of next year. And that new rate is going to be 4 mils. So the rate this year was 4.45, and we initially had, you know, in our millage model, we had that millage would pretty much stay flat or consistent throughout the life of the bond issue. The reason we see a drop in the millage rate is because of the triennial update that is also going to go into effect in 2021. So as all of you know, property values in Franklin County were adjusted this year. Those new values go into effect next year, as I mentioned. And with that increase in value, which was more than what we expected, the offset to that is a reduction in millage. So it still generates the same dollars. It's no increase to our taxpayers, our residents. So 4 mils will be the rate for 2021. The chart here, you can see as the old bond levy, kind of phased out and our new levy phased in 2019. Again, you can see 2020, it was 4.45. It's going to drop to 4. And again, that's going to generate about the same amount of dollars as what the levy did this year. So, and then the last thing that I just wanted to give a quick overview on is something called the Fair School Funding Plan. And probably all of you have seen some emails and some information on this, here recently. And basically what this is, about 3 years ago, at the urging of House Speaker Cupp and Representative Patterson, a work group of treasurers and superintendents was put together to come up with a school funding formula that really focuses on what does it cost to educate a child and what does each district need to operate. After 3 years of work on that, that work group has brought back a recommendation, and this new proposal includes several components. Similar to what we have in place now. There's a base cost component. There's a split between local and state share, and so we talk a little bit about local capacity and the wealth of each district in terms of what percentage is state and what percentage is local. So that capacity is going to shift just a little bit under this model. And so rather than being more heavily reliant on property value, it's going to give 60% weight to property value wealth and 40% weight to income wealth of the district. And then the next item that I have here is really one of the biggest differences in this funding model is that choice options. So those are things like, community schools and STEM schools and scholarship options for certain students. those types of school choice options will no longer be deductions from our state funding. So those students will not be included in the calculations, at the top of the formula, and so they will not be deducted from our funding at the bottom. So that is, there's been a real push for that, and so this is the first proposal that actually incorporates that. And then categorical aid is just some additional aid for, certain things like economically disadvantaged students, students with disabilities, ELL students, transportation, some of those other things where there are additional costs to educate children beyond that base cost. So this plan, this Fair School Funding Plan, would be, if fully implemented, about a $2 billion increase to the state to fund. So likely, if passed, it would be phased in over a number of years. So the status, where does this stand now? The House has approved the bill. It's House Bill 305. The Senate has not approved it, that their approval is pending. And then what would this mean for Grandview schools? Basically, this means flat funding for us. And that's actually what we have had for a number of years. So if you saw any of the simulations that were sent out with this information, it actually showed about a $15,000 reduction in our funding. Which is relatively small, but that reduction is actually due to lower than anticipated drop in scholarship applications for next year. So what that means is, because there there will not be those school choice deductions coming out of our funding, less reductions means it's flat funding, essentially, is what it is. So our funding is going to drop 15,000, but we're going to have 15,000 less deducted out for school choice, is what the projection is showing. So it will truly be flat funding. There is a hard guarantee in place for the next 2 fiscal years. And really that is what is the most concerning for our district, because we are largely on the guarantee. And then there's a per pupil guarantee in place beyond fiscal year 2024. So that's just kind of a quick overview. The information on this, there are developments happening almost daily on this. And so it's something that we'll continue to monitor. Again, we don't think it's going to change our funding. We think we'll have flat funding. So it really should have no significant impact on our district. So that is all I had, unless there's any questions.
Any questions for Beth? And thank you for the summary of the potential legislative changes. That was very clear.
Yeah, and thanks also to Emily and Eric, who both, it was kind of a group effort. Molly had actually received a call from our representative, asking how this is going to impact us, and asked for our input, which is really great. And so Molly reached out to each of us as, part of the finance committee. And so I know Emily did a pretty deep dive into, that legislation and offered some great insights, as well as Eric. So thank you to both of you guys.
Any other questions or discussion on the finance reports as presented? If not, could I have a motion to approve the 2020 financial reports and pay the November 2020 bills?
So moved.
Second.
Any other questions or discussion? Beth?
Mr. Bodie?
Aye.
Mrs. Gebhardt? Mr. Gousset?
Aye.
Mr. Truitt?
Aye.
And Ms. Wassman?
Aye.
Beth, once again, my apologies for
No problem, Jesse.
trying to get right over there. as I was saying, we have 7 items under board policy. All are in the first reading phase. If there's any questions or discussions from the board, now is a good time to address those. I think everything in the packet was relatively clear. I'm making assumption that the EDE policies, Mr. Culp, were all had your technology team's hands in them as opposed to just the policy people.
Great question. Full disclosure, I was not able to attend that because I was dealing with a pretty significant COVID situation at the time. Chris, I don't know if you're still on the call. Have you seen that?
Yes, Mr. Hinkle and I worked very closely together on reviewing those EDE policies.
I assume, but sometimes I assume wrong. So that's great. Any other questions or discussions on the policy first readings? Okay, under business and finance, we have 7 items for approval. Could I have a motion for business and finance 1 through 7, please?
So moved.
Second.
Second, awesome. Are there any questions or discussions?
Yeah,
I think
now the under donations, there's a $10,000 donation. Richard H. Bell, the second, class of 1964. I mean, I know we say this every month, but it is remarkable the donations that we get on a month-to-month basis.
I mean, this month is 16,000 plus 10 free pizzas. So.
And also, you know, 5,758 from Grant Douglas Tressler Game Preserve. I mean, how generous. I mean, truly just amazing.
Yep. If there's no other questions or discussions, Beth, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Bodie?
Aye.
Mrs. Gephardt?
Aye.
Mr. Gousset?
Aye.
Mr. Truitt?
Aye.
Ms. Wasmuth?
Aye.
Okay, under personnel, we have several items for approval, 10, I believe, and then I would entertain a motion to approve personnel 1 through 10, and if whoever's making the motion is amenable to lump in D1 co-curricular and extracurricular volunteers.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Mr. Culp, I know that a lot of times when we have I noticed that in your superintendent's written report, we had talked about longtime employee Tom Tynes' retirement. I don't mean to put you on the spot. I didn't know if you had any words for there, but that's kind of a neat story.
So interestingly, I had made a note to talk about that. So Tom, you may or may not know, is a graduate of Grandview Heights Schools, joined the Army out of high school, and served his country, and then came back to Grandview and has been working as a grounds for, I want to say, about 18 years. However, before he began working in our district as a grounds or custodian, he has his own carpet cleaning company, and he was contracted to work to clean all of the carpets in Grandview. So that was one of the connections. So Tom is a graduate and alumni. He is a glass half full guy. He is willing to do whatever it takes and then some. He is a good man, and we are sad to see him go. He and his wife are going to be moving to West Virginia, which is where Tom is originally from and grew up. So I think that I believe it's February like 28th or something is his letter of resignation. So we'll be sad to see him leave.
And I hear, I've never, we don't have a lot of carpet in our house, but I've always heard he can get a stain out of anything. He's one of the true best. Not to give him a shameless plug, but I guess in retirement there wouldn't be a conflict anymore. So, very, very talented. So thank you for that. Any other questions or discussions under personnel or volunteers? All right, Beth, or yes.
Yeah, Mr. Bodie?
Aye.
Mrs. Gephardt?
Aye.
Mr. Gousset?
Aye.
Mr. Truitt?
Aye.
And Ms. Wasmuth?
Aye.
All right, well, we're at that time of year where we have to set our organizational meeting and then just decide who's going to run on a temporary basis that meeting, because at the meeting in January is where we'll elect board officers for the 2021 calendar year. So the first thing on the agenda is to elect a temporary president, just to essentially kick off the organizational meeting in January. So is there a
Mr. President, I move that Jesse Truitt serve as the president PEM with the organizational meeting in January.
Second.
Beth? Or any other, or wait, sorry, I shouldn't, any other nominations for that? Sorry. Very, did not mean that way. I'd be happy to hear any other. Okay.
Mr. Bodie?
Aye.
Mrs. Gephardt?
Aye.
Mr. Gousset?
Aye.
Mr. Truitt?
Aye.
Ms. Wasmuth?
Aye.
Okay, I think I sent a reminder to have folks look at their calendars. There's actually two things we'd like to discuss, and we don't have to figure the second one out tonight, but just for our own planning, I'd like to, well, we do have to set the organizational meeting tonight, and then would like to have a quick discussion about potentially looking at a work session date. And if we don't get that ultimately set tonight, we can do that at the January meeting. So I believe by law, Beth, that has to be within the first 15 calendar days.
Correct.
So January 1st to 15th. Once again, you know, the board the last year or two has traditionally gone at 7 o'clock. We can do these meetings, you know, when we want. Quite frankly, I think for many of us, evenings are probably the only option during the week. But you know, sometimes years past we've started at 6, sometimes 7. Some boards go later, earlier. So, does anybody have a preference on a date for that?
Do we want to do the 13th of January, which is the Wednesday, and just do it at 7 p.m.?
I would say that would stick with our traditional structure so far and make some sense. If I mean, you know, we do have a plan right now to start the school on January 11th. We do have a little bit of, you know, if we would need to meet to have any of that discussion, if data would change a lot, you know, there could be an advantage to going on the 6th with that. If there were any of those topics, I mean, hopefully there's not, but, or I guess we could potentially call a special meeting if we need to do that and stick with the 13th. Either of those dates works well with me. You want to do the 13th at 7? Then I need an official motion and second for that, please.
I'll move to have the first meeting of the year be on January 13 at 7 p.m.
A second.
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Gousset. Beth, can you please call the roll?
Hey, Jesse, just a question real quick. So at the end of that line, we typically schedule the budget hearing at about 15 minutes before that meeting starts. Can we put in even 6:30 just to be safe as the budget hearing time in that motion?
Eric, are you good with that for your motion?
As amended, yes.
Kevin, you're good with that as a second?
Yeah, second that.
Okay, thank
Beth,
you.
I'm forgetting all your stuff tonight.
Yeah. Mr. Bodie?
Aye.
Mrs. Gephardt?
Aye.
Mr. Gousset?
Aye.
Mr. Truitt?
Aye.
And Ms. Wasmuth?
Aye.
So the other thing I wanted to bring up, and if this doesn't work, it's certainly not a problem, but Andy and I had a discussion about, you know, the board typically does a work session, and, you know, every other year we've got new board members. We do the organizational meeting about when we're doing it this year, and a couple weekends later, pick a Saturday morning or Sunday afternoon and do a work session. We would have the ability, and I'm certainly not making assumptions, but I think a lot of people aren't going anywhere. Because the board's consistent, we could conceivably, I know that several of the days over when kids are out, that Andy's actually working, we could do, you know, a work session during the week from 8 to noon or something during one of those days if we wanted to. I don't know if that works with everyone's work schedules. you know, to me, it's sort of 6 one, half a dozen the other. If we did it just a weekend down the road, but I just want to throw that out there for discussion. And obviously, you know, there's no requirement for a work session. We've just always sort of done it. and I think it makes sense sort of as a mid-year check-in to do so. So we can, you know, we could do that yet before that organizational meeting. We could wait to the organizational meeting and decide we want to do it. Just a thought process. But if we were going to set that, it would be nice to set that now and be able to advertise that that's what we're doing. So I don't know what the thoughts are.
Anyone have any objections to January 16th, that weekend? And I'll just go ahead and jump on this one. I would prefer not to do it during the break because I don't know about all of you all. I'm a little burnt out. I would like to open mouth stare in my living room for about an hour or two.
I would prefer not to do it on the 16th if possible. It's my daughter's birthday. So it would be my preference. But literally any other weekend works for me, or I don't know what people think about, or whether it would even be appropriate to do it on the 18th, which is a day off of school, but it's Martin Luther King Jr. Day, so that might not be an appropriate thing. I don't know.
I mean, I think what Molly's point is a good one, just sort of about burnout. And, you know, all of our styles are different. You know, I worry about, you know, school starting on the 11th, the barrage, what we're going to get then, you know, because we have things to discuss besides the learning modality. So if the preference of the board isn't to do it over the, you know, before the organizational meeting, then maybe we punt this one, and at the organizational meeting, we kind of figure out our calendar for the year at that point. Or we can now. I mean, it doesn't, the only reason I brought it up now was if we wanted to do it, you know, before then, you know.
Just getting it on the calendar. I mean, we can always change it if we need to.
That's true.
And I have thought that the Saturday mornings work really well. You just kind of get up and running. And to me, that's better than trying to compete with other stuff during the week if we're really going to devote the time to it. So, you know, the 23rd and the 30th are the next 2 weekends. Either one is fine with me.
I can do any weekend, actually. Let's ask the people who are going to do the heavy lifting on this one also too, Andy and Beth. Do you have a preference? Do you want to do, do you want to do before? And I already said it, I'm burnout, but if I'm the only one that's burnt out on the team, I'll drink a cup of coffee and put my smiley face on. Do either of you two have preferences on, because Dr. Lesher, if she's still on the call also, I'm like, they're gonna be doing a lot of this lifting too.
I mean, so I'll give you a general view. Honest, I don't really have a strong view. My hand to God, if I did, I would tell you on whether we did it over winter break or we did it on a Saturday. You know, I think, I mean, if we were able to come up with a day where everyone, you know, and I'll just randomly pick Monday, the 29th of December. You know, I'm just randomly throwing that date out. Like if that was a day where we could go, you know, 8:30 to noon and it worked in everyone's schedule, and we didn't have to take a Saturday morning, well, that'd be great. But conversely, as Eric outlined, I'm very comfortable with 8 to noon on a Saturday, and those seem to work really well. Also in January or February. So either one is completely and totally fine with me. And I just don't have a super strong feeling either way.
Yes, same. I would say the same. I don't have a preference either way. I can make any of those days work. So.
Does anyone have a birthday on the 9th or the 23rd?
Sure, somebody does, but it's not one of us. So.
Well, hey, then I was like, I will defer to someone else. 9th or 23rd, anyone? Bingo.
So I'll just, if I may, you know, not to be selfish here, and I could skip it because it's not the end of the world. And my son has a basketball game at 10 a.m. on the 9th at Bexley. Now,
for whatever reason,
who knows whether that'll even happen, right? So I share that with you only to say, if he in fact is going to play, I sure would like to go. But if he's, I don't even know if there'll be a season. So I share
I
that
have a
with
motion to do the board work session beginning at or on the 23rd. I mean, that's what I'm hearing. I don't mean to drive this along. Start time, I think we've had more of a debate on what time we start than what day it is sometimes. You know, and I would say we kick the can down the road on the modality at which we want to meet to see what our climate is at that point. We don't have to make that decision right now, but I would like to go ahead and let's schedule it so it's on the books if that's okay with everybody. So we could just tentatively say we're going to do it on the 23rd so Andy and his team can plan, and we do the organizational meeting, throw it in the list with everything else. Do you want to just do that? Or we could vote and actually do it now. Doesn't really matter.
Let's vote and do it.
All right, what time y'all want to start? 7?
7:30. 7:30, bring coffee.
I'd probably be an 8 or later guy, but I'll make anything work.
Eight's good.
Eight's my preference, but I can make anything work.
I was sort of kidding with your. All right, let's look at January. If I have a motion to look at a board work session on January 11th, beginning at 8 a.m. with the
January 23rd.
January
23rd. Where the hell was I getting that? So
the 11th is the first day back.
all right.
You do it then. Show up.
Yeah, that gives us 2 weeks back in. Okay. Was there a motion for that? I'm sorry.
So
So moved.
I think Kevin beat you slightly. You good with the second?
Second.
All right, Beth, call the roll.
Mr. Bodie?
Aye.
Mrs. Gephardt?
Aye.
Mr. Gousset?
Aye.
Mr. Truitt?
Aye.
And Ms. Wassman?
Aye.
So really quick, I just want to give this plug on those 2 meetings that are coming up, just as a point of discussion publicly. You know, the organizational meeting obviously has a lot of sort of checkbox things that we're required to do, but one of the things that we either typically figure out at either the organizational meeting or the work session is sort of the committees that we've had and liaison positions, and those have fluctuated through the years depending on the boards that we've had. So, you know, I have no personal reason to change anything we're doing, but, you know, I think sometimes boards forget it's up to us. So if we want to, you know, look at that committee structure any differently or our liaison structure, you know, that's a good time to get that set. Could be as easy as let's just do the same thing and everyone stays, or to switch around. I think there's, you know, some value in both of those at times. The second thing is, you know, sort of those work sessions have really morphed through the years. You know, when I started on the board 7 years ago, those were really 100% board driven. And as we've gone on, I think they're more superintendent driven, but which I think is a good thing and good for our governance structure. But with that being said, you know, if there are things that we want to dig into, you know, let Andy and I both know that, and Andy and Eric and I will work on that agenda for that day. We want to use that time effectively, and really it's meant to work on more sort of big picture, long picture things. You know, we have a facility plan that's sort of been sitting on the shelf. We're obviously mid-project. We might want to have some discussion. We're so lucky to have Eric and Emily on the finance team, but I think there may be some things that we want to talk about and dig in as a board. And so really think about those things. And I would say, if, you know, maybe by towards the end of the break, let us know, because if we need to bring Julie Martin in, or we need, you know, Jamie Lusher to put things together, we want to give people good lead time on that. I don't want to decide on that agenda on the 13th and expect the team to pull stuff together. So if I could tentatively say around the first of the year, if you have thoughts, if you could get us that direction by then, or pick up the phone and call me, or pick up the phone and call Andy. You know, we rely on Andy to put that agenda together, but he and I and Eric, you know, we tends to be a little bit of a collaborative effort. And we really want that to be, you know, reflective of you know, what the entire board wants to talk. And you know, the thing I would say is think about 5,000, 10,000 foot view sort of things. And one of the things that concerns me about COVID is, are we thinking about all those other, you don't want to pile on, but we also, we need to make sure that our big picture stuff's in line, and that we're doing the things we want to do in these positions. So, so that's what I'd have to say about those two things. Any other items for discussion from anybody while we're here?
I want to say just for a minute, real quick. The leadership team has done amazing. We made it 4 months in hybrid. We did better than I think anyone ever could have imagined we would do when we were in August talking about remote. I want to say from the bottom of my heart, the educators in our community, thank you. Thank you for all you've done. The kids, my child runs out the door because he's so excited to go to school every day, which teacher's kid, who knew? But from the very, very bottom of my heart, and I think I'm speaking on behalf of the whole board, thank you to our educators and our nurses and our food services, our custodian, everyone our leadership team. Thank you so much I couldn't have been prouder of the work that everybody did. And we're doing, it might not seem like it right now, we're doing great work, and we're going to get through this. There's a vaccine coming, but I can't thank everyone that was on this call for everything they said, and for our educators. Man, they gave and gave and gave and gave so much. Thank you so much for all that you've done.
Well said. Anything else? Anybody have any fun things they want to go into executive session for?
No.
All right. Motion for adjournment.
So moved.
There's a second on that. All right, Beth.
Mr. Bodie.
Aye.
Mrs. Gebhardt.
Aye.
Mr. Gousset.
Aye.
Mr. Truitt.
Aye.
Ms. Wassman.
Aye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.